Previously, we went over the map functionality within the Ruby language. Now, you might ask yourself, hey, does this functionality exist within other languages? And frequently enough, you will find that it does exist. There are some sort of map functionalities or something similar to that in other languages, such as JavaScript. So let's take a look at JavaScript's map functionality in this video. Now, let's say that we have an array of people, Tom, Dick, and Harry, and these are objects here. So what we want to do, instead of having the objects of those people, we just want their names. So what you might do, or previously, people might just create some sort of empty array here with the names, and then they'd go ahead and they'd create a for loop, and in there they would set I, which would be like the index, would represent the index, and then I, as long as I is less than the length of the people array, then we'll continue going through this loop, and then you go ahead and of course increment I each time you go through it, and then you take the person's name using I as the index, and then making sure to call the name property on that object, and you just push that into the new empty array. Now if you console.log the new array, let me go ahead and console.log that, it's going to return Tom, Dick, and Harry. So the names just like we wanted to. Now we can shorten this dramatically using that map functionality that is within JavaScript. Now you can take a look at the documentation here, going to array prototype.map, at what this functionality, this map functionality does. Now, this map functionality does take a callback function, and that callback function usually you just set as having one parameter, which would be the current value, but you can optionally use index, array, and then this arg being at the end, for working with the map functionality. But usually you'll just see the current value being set there, and that's what we use in this example today. Feel free to experiment with those other values as well. So let's take a look at that. If we just console.log here, I'm just going to console.log it rather than creating a variable for the new array. We're just going to console.log that brand new array straight to the terminal down here. So we're going to get basically the same thing duplicated, but with a much shorter functionality. So I'll just use the map functionality on people, passing in the callback function with the current value. So we'll just say person, and then we'll make sure you return here. Don't forget to return. You're going to get a whole bunch of undefined or null values in there. So we're going to return the value that we want. So the value that we want is the person's name. All right. And then if we just run this now, we're going to get Tom, Dick, and Harry. So that in itself is much shorter, and I think much more readable for other developers and even yourself. If you come to visit this in the future, say years down the line, you can clearly see what this is doing. Now, you could even shorten this up even more using JavaScript's new arrow syntax. And to do that, we just take away function here, take away the parenthesis, create that arrow there, and then bring it all into one line. I could even shorten this up just to bring it all in one single line. Now this is much easier, in my opinion, much easier to read. So we got people, that's the array up here, okay. Then next we want to map through it, so we want to iterate over all those people in there. And okay, this is the person object right on, and then for each of those objects, we want to return the person.name. Now, if you're not familiar with the arrow functionality, this implicitly returns the value here when it doesn't have the curly braces around it. So this will return the person's.name for you. So if I rerun this, it's going to give us those same values down here. So that is the map functionality within JavaScript. Feel free to take a look at that, check out the documentation, and experiment with it on your own.